So like I previously discussed about suspected victims, we have a whole bunch more to talk about. So I previously talked about Ray Davis and Sherry Jo Bates, but we also have a few others. One in particular, this one would happen in 1963, and this would involve two people. So 18-year-old Robert George Domingos and his fiancée, 17-year-old Linda Faye Edwards. Now, they were both shot dead on a beach near Lompoc, and this was on what was Senior Skip Day. If you don't know what Senior Skip Day or Senior Ditch Day is, basically that day is meant for seniors just to kind of like leave school, not have anything to do with it that day, and just have fun. And you typically you won't get in trouble for it. So it is believed that they possibly could be, or it could be the work of the Zodiac killer. So if that is true, this would have happened right after the Ray Davis murder that happened in 1962. So approximately about a year. Like I've talked about previously before, when it comes to serial killers, they basically like fill up their tank. And especially where if this indeed are, if all of these are their victims, then Ray Davis, the first murder that happened on April 9th of 1962, the next one wouldn't happen until June 4th of 1963. And that would give him approximately about a year and 2 months of this tank being full and then it depleting. And then the next murder wouldn't be until 1964. So that's less than a year later, another murder happens. There is some like a time gap between 1964 and 1966, but let's kind of go back to the 1963 murder. So Linda Faye Edwards and Robert Domingos, they obviously shot dead on a beach near Lompoc, and it's believed that the assailant attempted to bind them, which is something that the Zodiac had done in like future cases that he would commit, the act of binding his victims or like tying them up before killing them. And after Linda and Robert were attempted to be bound, basically, they freed themselves and they tried to flee, but then the killer kind of like, I would imagine, freaked out because he wouldn't be expecting this, and then repeatedly shot them in the back and the chest with his .22 caliber pistol, which also is another repetitive weapon of the Zodiac killer, is a .22 caliber. So after shooting them, their bodies would be placed in a small shack, and the killer then would try and burn the shack down, but that was completely unsuccessful. That could be in an attempt to hide their bodies, or to, if it's set ablaze, like have an indication for people to be like, whoa, there's a fire, something happened, and then find the bodies like right after. So the next murder, like I said, would happen on February 5th of 1964, and this is with Johnny Ray Swindle, who's 19, and Joyce Ann Swindle, who's 19 as well. They were a newlywed couple, and they were walking along Ocean Beach in San Diego. They were just on their, like, I would assume probably honeymoon, but they were newly married, and they were from Alabama, so I would imagine they were on their honeymoon. Now, as they were walking along Ocean Beach, whoever killed them was on a cliff nearby and shot them from a distance with a .22 caliber rifle. Now, Johnny was alive for a few hours after, even though he got hit in the back, his left thigh, shot through the ear and through the temple, which is miraculous that he was still alive. But Joyce died almost instantly after being shot in the back, the head, and her left arm as well. So after all the shooting commenced, the suspect or the perpetrator then decided to take Johnny's wallet after he thought they had both like fully died from their wounds, or possibly after Johnny died from his wounds, which would be hours after. Police believe that these two were a thrill kill, which, I mean, shot in broad daylight, walking along Ocean Beach, and the killer is on a cliff nearby. It's speaking like, oh, there was a set of shootings where a guy was on like an overpass and he was shooting into the public. But yeah, it really seems to be kind of like a thrill kill at this point with this person. It's crazy. Now, Rita Swindle, Johnny's sister, thought that this might be an early slaying of Zodiac, which it quite possibly could be true because the MO is very, very similar, like very similar. Right after the murders of Johnny Ray Swindle and Joyce Ann Swindle, we would have a time gap between their murder on February 5th, 1964, to that of the stabbing death of Sherry Jo Bates, who I previously talked about, who did in fact die after being stabbed to death and nearly decapitated on October 30th of 1966. So a possibility for a time gap could be that said perpetrator was... Now, if he was arrested, his palm print would possibly be in the system, which I already discussed. They found a palm print previously. Or possibly they were in a different part or like had to go somewhere. If this person is indeed a military personnel or ex-military or has something to do with the military, that could also be a reason why there is an almost 2-year gap between the Swindles murders and Sherry Jo Bates. But that's just me speculating because of the military boot they found at the Lake Berryessa murders, that attack. Like, it's just weird. So our next attack would happen not even a full year later, and this would be on June 8th of 1967. So Enadine Molina Martinez and Furman Rodriguez. So Enadine is 35 and Furman is 36. They were both attacked and they would be murdered. And this would be at approximately 10 p.m. Now, this attack happened on Vallecillos Road in Alameda County, California. So they were just kind of sitting in their car when a stranger approached them. Now, when the stranger approached them, this stranger told them they needed to get out of the car. So when Furman got out of the car, he was shot. Then the killer took Enadine and left Furman there. Like, just left Furman dead next to Enadine's car. Sure shit. That's what happened. So the killer then would end up take Enadine and they would stop near the Sunnel Regional Wilderness Preserve. And Enadine tried to escape. But it's during this kind of like frenzy of trying to get away that the killer of Furman ended up shooting her twice in the back, which killed her instantly. And the killer then drove off. Now, shortly after, police would be called to report 2 gunshots. Obviously, not knowing exactly what the gunshots are from, the police then would find Enadine's lifeless body at around 11 p.m. So it's approximately about an hour later. The police who were investigating then would discover her car parked on Vallecillos Road, and they would find Furman. Furman had been shot twice in the front, so once in the chest, once in the shoulder, and the weapon that was used was a .22 caliber. Robbery and rape were ruled out, just like the other crimes that the Zodiac committed. And these murders actually happened close to an area in which the Zodiac would mail a letter from in March of 1971. And this letter would go to the Los Angeles Times newspaper. And this is close to Pleasanton, California. Interesting, right? Interesting. So obviously that happened in 1967. We have the other murders take place, and then we have our next possible victim, that of John Franklin Hood. He was 24 years old, and he had served in Vietnam. And also in this is his fiancée, Sandra Garcia. Sandra Garcia was 20 at the time. This happened on February 21st of 1970. So what happened is basically this. The couple would be found the next day, so on February 22nd of 1970. They would be found face down on a blanket. Now, John had died due to being stabbed 11 times. The majority of these happened on his back and his face, and Sandra her attack was more vicious because they couldn't tell who she was. She was completely unrecognizable. Now, the knife that was used was a 4-inch fish bone handled knife, and this knife was found underneath the blanket and it was partially buried. There was no robbery, no sexual intercourse, nothing. And this double homicide was really similar to that of the death of Domingos and Edwards that happened 7 years earlier, and very close to the Lake Berryessa attack on Hartnell and Shepherd. It was very, very similar. They're found on, they're on a blanket, somewhat picnic style, and they're both killed viciously. I shit you not. The craziest thing, how close and how similar these are. And this attack on John and Sandra happened 30 miles west of the Lake Berryessa attack. So within the same range of where the Zodiac is basically running around trying to find his victims. It's crazy. Our next attack would be the following month, and it wouldn't even be a full-on attack. It would be something that would terrify this young mom. So Kathleen Johns was driving on Highway 132, and this is in an area west of Modesto that's near the I-580. So she was driving with her young child. She was pregnant at the time, and she stopped for something or was flagged down by this guy driving, and this man said, "Hey, there's something wrong with your tire." So he looked at her tire, and obviously she's kind of weirded out by him. Well, he says that her tire is loose and says he tightens it, but he actually loosens her tire. He does this as a ploy to have her start driving again. He's still near her, so as the tire falls off her car, he can, take her, abduct her, which is what he does. But what he doesn't realize is that she's pregnant because he doesn't see her get out of the car. She's pregnant. She also has a baby in the car. So he ends up abducting both of them. And it's at some point during this car ride where he's extremely infuriated because there's a baby in the car. And Kathleen is trying to think of, hey, I need to get out. I need to escape. I need to save me and my baby. So what happens is he's driving around aimlessly, and somewhere in the area of Stockton and Patterson, California, this is when she jumps out of the car. She gets out of the car, and she's in the car with this guy for about a half an hour or 1.5 hours. I don't know how terrified this woman is. I listened to an interview with her, and she sounds absolutely still terrified. Obviously, this happened in 1970, and I believe this interview happened in the 90s, but she still sounded terrified. I would have, terrified or not, I would have knocked the dude in the nads if he was trying to abduct me, my pregnant ass, and my child. I would have knocked him in the nads. Obviously, it's different saying it outsider's perspective looking in, because you don't know how you're going to act when you're in that scenario, but still. Just a few months later, on June 19th of 1970, a police sergeant would be gunned down, and he would be shot 3 times. This is 25-year-old Richard Philip Raditish. Yeah, but he went by Rich. Now, he would be shot by a .38, which this is a different caliber than what we're used to seeing with the Zodiac. So I believe this one is kind of skeptical because there's no direct indication that this has Zodiac's responsibility. So this is kind of a maybe, but could be. Now, he would be gunned down at point blank range through his driver's side of the car. So he's sitting in the car and he's shot through the window. And this is while he's in the process of basically writing a ticket. And this is on Waller Street in the Haight-Ashbury district in San Francisco. Now, after this happens, obviously, huge thing. It's a police sergeant that has now died. The police investigate this and try to possibly link Zodiac to it, who had said in correspondence that he took responsibility for this crime because he's taunting the authorities in the letters that he is like putting out, but there's no direct link between Zodiac and the Radatish murder. So that one's kind of a possibly maybe. And the last possible I have would happen just in September of that year as well. So on September 6th of 1970, Donna Ann Lass, who was 25, went missing. She went missing in State Line, Nevada. Now, there's a postcard for Forest Pines Condos, which is in a place near Lake Tahoe, that was sent to Chronicle. And this was sent to Chronicle the following year. So March 22nd, 1971. And this basically, there's no evidence that really ties Zodiac to Donna Lass's disappearance, but there's still kind of some speculation that he does have something to do with it. But there's nothing fully to corroborate it, I guess you could say. So Donna Lass, this whole case, or actually, why don't we just kind of talk about the postcard? So the postcard is addressed to a man named Paul Averly, and it's believed to be from the Zodiac. So this postcard claims responsibility for Donna Lass, and there's a collage that's made that's sent with this. And basically, that's why it's it's on the postcard, but it's a collage that's made. You know how we've seen in different media sources of a message that has cut out letters, and it's all different letters, all different fonts, stuff like that. And it's really creepy and morbid. That's how this is. And basically it's an ad for those condos, the Forest Pines condos. And it has the words Sierra Club sought victim 12, pass Lake Tahoe areas, around in snow and peek through the pines. These are the words that are on it. And it also has Zodiac's symbol. So it's the circle with a cross through it, or a crosshair-like symbol is what people say it is. And that symbol is in the usual place as to where it is, which is the lower right-hand corner of the card, and also in the return address area, making it seem like it's from Zodiac. So Donna Lass was actually working as a nurse at the Sahara Tahoe Hotel and Casino, and she had worked until about 2 a.m. on September 6th of 1970. And her last logbook entry is at 1:50 a.m. It's either on that same day, later on that same day, that her landlord had phone calls from just this man who claimed that Donna had left town because of an emergency, and also had called her employer. But there was no emergency. He said it was a family emergency. There's no family emergency. She has never been found. The caller has never been, they don't know who the caller is. Her car was found near State Line, Nevada, near her apartment, and nobody saw her leave the casino. The only thing that is missing out of all of her belongings is her purse, the clothes she was wearing, and her, the night she mysteriously vanished. Everything else is there. Nothing else is taken. Her purse, and her clothes that she was wearing. That's the only thing that's missing. What else is strange is that there's a grave site that was found near a lodge in Norden, California, which is on the Sierra Club property. What else is strange is that there was a Christmas card that was sent to a Mary Pilker, which is Donna's sister. And this card has trees that are covered in snow. And when you open it, it says, holiday greetings, best wishes for a happy new year. It says, best wishes, Saint Donna and Guardian of the Pines. Which, if you think about the postcard that was sent, what did it say on it? Peek through the pines. Sierra Club, Sock Victim 12, past Lake Tahoe areas, around in snow. Very strange that these would come around Christmas time. This letter was sent to Mary Pilkner, her sister. And it was postmarked that it was sent from either San Mateo or Santa Clara County in California. Now, Donna, we've never found her. She was listed as deceased, or death in absentia, basically, in 1982, after her mother died. In the obituary, it says that Donna is deceased, but we don't know where she is. At all. At all. No. There's no evidence to corroborate whether or not this was Zodiac. There's no evidence to corroborate whether or not she was abducted. We don't know anything because they have never found her body. We don't have any tangible evidence that says that this is Zodiac or not.